And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have a newcomer into the temple. Coming to us straight from Psychogenesis Games, currently developing Amerarcana, a PBTA-powered game of heroic horror. The one and only Emlyn Freeman.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for venturing the long journey all the way up to my temple.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. So, it's a bit of a tradition around here to open with the humble beginnings, in a sense. So, with that in mind, walk me through your first introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
Well, it goes back so far in my life that I'm not 100% certain that I remember which game was my first one. But I was 9 or 10, and I may have been introduced with AD&D Second Edition, and I may have been introduced with Paranoia Second Edition. Um, Paranoia is the first game I owned. It's the first game I ran. That's what I tend to think of as my first game. But D&D may have technically beaten it to the punch. Um, it goes back so far. It's hard for me to really identify what made it stick. It's just feels like it's always been a part of my DNA. I identified that I wanted to be a writer very early on in my childhood, and seemed like a sort of a logical outgrowth from that, and a way to uh, explore imagination while putting some structure to it. I was also a theater kid, so there's some cross pollination in the DNA there. Um, but it's just been part of my life all the way for 30 years now, and um, I did some kind of game design dating back to my high school time, and I've it's kind of gone in and out as to whether I've had groups and uh, how much design I've actually done over the years, and I have only recently tried to publish anything,
Mm-hmm.
but it's been something that I've always spent my time on. I've most part times of my life I've had an RPG project that I'm working on in some fashion or another.
Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, you've done quite a few different projects over the years. With Americana, was this something that was a recent idea, or was this an idea that you had been kicking around for a while?
Uh, some of both. It I've been trying to find some way of doing uh, something with urban fantasy for years, because I'm a big fan of the genre, and I always want to design a game in any genre that I'm a fan of, one way or another. And I've wanted to do something that integrates my career into gaming in some
Mm-hmm.
fashion. I work in disability services, and so I wanted to find a way to put disability services or social work or something into a game in some fashion. I played around with a couple of ideas a few years ago, but I couldn't find a way to really make it feel respectful,
Hmm.
and you got to it's a tightrope, and then just I guess a year and a half ago, something like that. I uh, Suddenly I thought about expanding the definition of what the game would be about from just social services to all public service, and suddenly something just clicked, and it all kind of fell into place. Uh,
Yeah, I can certainly get that. So, are you familiar with the concept of Appendix N?
uh, it sounds familiar. You'll have to remind me.
Obviously, Appendix N was a section in early editions of D&D, and it's
Hmm.
become kind of a shorthand for a segment within a core book that details inspirations or reference materials or further reading,
Mm.
whatever you'd want to call it. Sometimes it's at the front of the book, like with a lot of White Wolf games. Sometimes it's at the back of the book, but a lot of games will have this, and it'll usually have reference or inspirational material from things like comic books, TV shows, video games, films, novels, what have you. What would be some of the entries that would be in Amerarcana's Appendix N?
Well, there is actually a section of that in the book, and the two biggest pieces of the DNA from a lore standpoint are John dies at the end, and the series of books by Jason Pargin about John and Dave, and then the Great Cities duology by N.K. Jemisin, the city that we became, as the being the first one. And it was the city we became that uh, I'm not exactly sure how it made me think about doing this game, but somehow it just really inspired me to, um, well, for one, to um, do more, to really get into the urban fantasy, and then another to sort of wear my heart on my sleeve in terms um, of politics, because the game is that as it stands is pretty unapologetically liberal. I'm not going to go to the point where I think that it has anything profound to say, but it is about the what I say the threats to our existence that are uh, in a metaphorical sense made literal in the game, and those threats are coming from a pretty American liberal perspective, and so that's kind of where the city we became is a very unapologetically liberal book, and so that's kind of where that piece of Amerarcana came from. Um, and then uh, John dies at the end is a it's kind of the horror comedy piece of it, where that came from for the game, because it's one of my favorite book series, favorite horror comedies, and especially, in that it's about um, the wrong people for the job, which is something that is very much supposed to be part of Americana. Both the humor and the horror, in that of that your the PCs are not the right people for the job in Americana.
The kind of people who are at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Um, Part of the premise of the game is that the 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 world has always been defended by certain a certain group of people with magical powers, fighting from the shadows, and that group has all been um, destroyed. That there's that the handful of those people who haven't been killed off are without their powers, and so the um, the main player characters are kind of the backup squad. You know, they're people whose powers are not the right thing for a war. Um, they're not. I made a definitive decision to make pretty much no powers in the book be un, uh, unambiguously aggressive and damaging, because I wanted the players to be forced to be creative and to feel like they're the wrong people for the job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that those are the two main inspirations in terms of the lore. There's a couple others. Um, the Unnoticeables by Robert Brockway is another book that's a central piece of it. A couple others that are escaping my memory at the moment, and then oh, of course, uh, Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman is the archetypal urban fantasy, and it's what got me into the genre in the first place back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And then A Madness of Angels by Kate Griffin is a pretty pretty obscure series, but it's a really fun, very urban fantasy. Uh, and then from the on the mechanics side, it's as you mentioned, it's a PBTA game powered by the Apocalypse. For anyone who might be listening who's not familiar with that term,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who would be, but who wouldn't be,
Yeah.
and if they're listening to this, but it's always possible.
Mm-hmm.
But Monster of the Week is the biggest single influence, because this is also a Monster of the Week type game, and uh, the Monster of the Week game does a really good job of capturing a lot of that, the feeling of things like Supernatural and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, uh, which is are, while not direct influences, definitely uh,
Indirect.
indirect influences. You know, those are things that have been part of my uh, my media landscape for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Monster of the Week, and then a couple of other PBTA games like Masks is probably the other one that I really like and tried to draw inspiration from. Uh, and of course, the granddaddy of PBTA, the Apocalypse World itself. I didn't pull much directly from that, and then I pulled a fair bit of stuff from Dungeon World, the kind of D&D PBTA
Mm-hmm.
hack, and that one is actually Creative Commons, so there is a decent amount of rules text that I just took straight from there. That's in Amerarcana. It's very much, uh, there. I have no idea how much of the game comes from there, but it's a reasonable amount of the mechanics, and of course none of the lore. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, there's my very long-winded answer to your question of what are my Appendix N influences.
Yeah. Now, you've dipped into quite a few different systems. You've done stuff with I believe Fate. You've done
Mhm.
stuff with 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 Cortex Prime. You've done stuff with Genesis.
Mhm.
What made you go with Powered by the Apocalypse for this one? Was
Uh,
was it something you was it something you planned on from the get go, or did it happen to fall into that one after some testing?
It was definitely from the get go. Something about this game just felt PBTA to me. It just seemed like it was the natural fit for something that was going to be a little more and narrative focused and theme focused than some of my other work. That so that I didn't want the mechanics to be as central um, a, a piece of it as in some of my other games. In the one of the other games I put out, Reality Redacted, works on the Cortex Prime engine, and uh, there's a lot more levers to pull in Cortex that both in design and on the table of messing with dice mechanics and stuff
Hmm.
that the players can do, and that's just didn't. I didn't want to have something that where it was going to be that complex fiddling with dice mechanics for this game. I wanted the mechanics to get out of the way as much as they could, and I couldn't tell you exactly why. It just felt right.
Hmm. I can certainly see it, and there are there are certain genres and certain subgenres that some games will be better fits for than others. I mean, yeah, one can argue that a given universal game would be it can fit just about anything, but that comes with its own caveats that a lot of the proponents of universalist games don't want people thinking about. uh, you know,
Yeah, any universal game, has its own assumptions about what kind of universe it is modeling, in a
yeah,
sense.
it's I mean, I don't mean to pick on say the GURPS fanatics or anything like that. I just think that it's important to give the full picture because could you run just about anything with GURPS? Yes. Are you gonna have to do a whole lot of work depending on what part of anything that entails? Also yes.
Yeah,
And if somebody's going to dive into GURPS and wanting to do their particular special setting, that's something that they should be aware of.
yeah,
Um, there is no one game for everybody. If that was the case, there wouldn't be so many games out there.
yeah, absolutely. And I enjoy working with universal systems. Obviously, you mentioned that I have worked with different systems, and those are all, in some sense, universal. But uh, I like to use them as uh, stepping stones for my design because
Hmm.
I'm not really that good at novel mechanics. I'm better at figuring out how to implement someone else's mechanics. So I've never really come up with a novel way of putting dice together, and so I have like to have a framework, but um, I wouldn't want to make someone else go through as much effort as I do to create a game, as which is what I always feel it ends up being required by most
Hmm.
universal systems.
Yeah.
The GM has to play game designer.
Now, obviously, I think all GMs are backseat game designers in some form or another. It's just
Well,
some more than others. Especially since one of my one of my mantras here in the temple is no one plays Uno as written.
mhm.
Uh, like I would say very few people play straight rules as written, even if they claim otherwise. Uh, I mean, maybe
Yeah,
you'll do rules as written the first couple sessions, but after that, you're going to start tweaking stuff to tailor it to your table. It's
yeah,
not a matter of
absolutely.
if, just when. But
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't even play my own games rules as written because um, it has to do with the specific group that you're playing with. It's like
Mhm.
when I write the rules, they're what I would, if I were to, if it was a table full of me, this is how I would put the rules together and what we would do. But the group that I'm playing with, okay, this stuff isn't really their jam, so I'm just going to cut that out of the version of the game that we're actually playing at the table.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, with that in mind, since one of the big things with a PBTA game is the playbooks, I think that's as good of a spot as any to kind of go into how the play styles that would be represented in each. So I'm gonna go through the playbooks that were in the material you had sent me, and I'd like you to kind of give a few bullet points, or even just a single bullet point, as to the play style and what sort of setup it would encourage.
Okay.
So, starting with healthcare or pharmacoalchemists and psychomancers. I
Uh,
do enjoy that. I do enjoy those little titles given.
I've spent way too much time on figuring those out. Primarily because I came up with pharmacoalchemy as its own thing, and then I was like, well, if I'm going to use that, then all of them have to have a name like that. So
Hmm.
I guess I'm going to put some thought into it. Anyway, healthcare is it's very much a support class. It's it is to some degree the box of band-aids, but then also um, you can do things like creating alchemical mixtures that can change someone's help people out or change someone's mood or something like that. You can there's one of the moves is as therapy. You can always calm people down no matter what. So it's very much a support class centered around the sort of things that people in a healthcare field can do one way or the other.
Hmm. And so next would be public libraries or bibliomancers.
Yeah, public libraries is it's a class for people who like to know things. They're experts in everything. They do a lot of um, knowledge based stuff, and then there's also a central part of it is the idea of tropes that they can make the world conform to the reality of of literature and media, um, and so that's someone who likes kind of playing with tropes and with stereotypes and not archetypes is kind of where that is intended to be used.
Yep. Public policy or thalmic licensors. Oh, oh, god damn it! Not again. Hang on, folks. Sorry about that. Discord decided that my mic doesn't want to exist for a few
Ah,
seconds. Um,
okay.
Public policy is the next one I had on the list.
Hmm. Public policy is
Hmm.
it's kind of um, it's a playbook that's kind of like the controller from D&D, like starting from in fourth edition, the idea that you're kind of changing up the battlefield and forcing the enemies where you want them, and then it or one of the moves that has one of my playtesters latched onto as kind of a central part of the character is the fact that is a move that doesn't allow anyone to lie to you. So when someone lies to you, you know it, and so that's a kind of the idea of rules and and truth is kind of a central part
Hmm.
of the playbook.
Oh, yeah, I could certainly see that. Oh, so next would be public transit or transit conjurers.
Yeah, public transit, those are kind of the rogues of the group. They are intended to move fast and break things.
Hmm.
They A lot of their powers have to do with speed, uh, getting both getting there and getting away. Um,
The wheelman.
yeah, wheelman, and then like they have the flash type powers as well.
Hmm.
There's one of the a move that one of the playtesters kind of built his character around was the idea was the move flash. When something bad is happening somewhere,
Hmm.
roll, and if you succeed in your roll, you get there before the tragedy really kicks off, and uh, if not, then you get there just in time to get in trouble.
Hmm. They're probably the most likely to believe that a drive-through is actually a drive-in.
Yes,
Uh, and I brought up the wheelman because everybody knows that one driver who does not believe in the concept of brakes.
indeed.
Uh, but next would be public utilities or grid summoners.
Yeah, public utilities is kind of um, the sorcerer or warlock of the game in a sense, because they are the ones with the closest to aggressive, uh, uh, because they have elemental powers. They
Mm-hmm.
can manipulate electricity and water, and so that's they can be a lot less subtle than a lot of the other ones, as they are, shooting lightning at people and make hitting them with waves. Uh, so that's where that kind of the person who really likes the idea of hitting people with lightning is where the public utilities
Mm-hmm.
goes for.
Yeah. Um, and then public works or infrastructurists.
Yeah, public works is well the kind of iconic move from for them is the ability to bring two kind of iconic abilities. One is to bring buildings to life and like hit people with the build with living buildings, and the other is to change reality by changing maps. That is the one that our playtester has really centered his character around. So that's the notion there of uh, trying. If you're interested in, again, it's kind of that messing with the environment,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and trying to make things easier on your peers and harder for your foes. The one of the inspirations is kind of like the operator from the Matrix.
Mm-hmm. I could see that. I've seen some games have concrete druids, as it were, and
Yes, yes,
but I suppose the most obvious joke I could make is taking the expression "if these walls could talk" a little bit literally.
yes, absolutely.
Uh, but then again, the other gag I've made with druids is I'm the Lorax. I speak for the trees. Don't listen to these trees. They speak Vietnamese. But it's there. If you're when you're dealing with being able to have an edit button regarding regarding infrastructure and how buildings are set up, uh, that's an easy way to trap someone into dead ends because what may have been an alleyway that was a shortcut to the other part of the block suddenly isn't there anymore.
Yeah,
And not only is it
exactly.
not there anymore, it was never there.
Yeah.
Uh, but the last of the playbooks is, of course, social services or parasocial workers.
Yeah. So as I said, this was kind of the everything started from here, as that was originally going to be. I was trying to find a way to make this work as an entire game, and it only made sense when I put it into one playbook. But it's the consummate support class. It's all about making other people better, uh, making giving you, like, instead of like the help move, is a basic move in uh, most, if not all,
Mm-hmm.
PBT games. Is is kind of what the social services character is built around. Like they have ability to make that, to help and be more effective, or to just uh, not even have to roll when they're trying to help, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
The Diplomancer.
yeah, I'll bet.
Um,
And there's a bit of, it's also a bit of a grab bag in some of the stuff, just because I'm more familiar with that field than I
mm-hmm.
am with any of the other ones. So I feel like I was trying to capture uh, some of the different places that social services can be coming from,
Mm-hmm.
into that, coming into a uh, trying to put that all into one playbook.
Mm-hmm. And with with that in mind, when it comes when it comes to this particular type of setting, um, whenever you have a game that has a setting that's a little bit more out there than others, um, it can. I think it's doubtless advisable to have a few story seeds to help give new GMs kind of an idea of where to take adventures with it.
Hmm.
So within the full book of Amerarcana, do you? I'm not gonna say full on modules, but do you have plans on putting in little one page story seeds that a GM could use as the foundation for a starting adventure?
Yes, there, for one, there's a fairly robust section on how to build an adventure for this game. And then additionally, there's a couple. There's one uh, fully fleshed out. I say that, but I always make my adventures pretty minimalist, so
Mm-hmm.
it's a minimalist type adventure seed. But it's got a cast of characters and some basic uh, events that might happen, that's intended to be an introductory scenario to the setting, and then I'm have a couple other just kind of story seeds, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
that people can use as well. And the it's also worth noting that as a monster of the week type game, it's really intended to be built around, here's a monster. How are you going to make that? How are you going to find out what monster it is, what they're doing, and try to stop them? So it has a bestiary of the various monsters that they can encounter, and so it's hopefully, any of those monsters should provoke some story ideas, and it has bits of that. It's intended to provoke those story ideas based on how I've written the bestiary.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just uh, how much damage they do and what and that sort of thing. It's
Yeah,
got story seeds built into their descriptions.
yeah. When I was referring to that sort of story seed concept, the one of the big ones that one of the big examples that came to mind is those one-page adventures that you see all over the place in Savage Worlds. You know,
Mm.
just a whole adventure that's just on one page. Sometimes they have an act structure, sometimes they don't, but it's very light on detail. Uh, but with within that, since technically speaking, all of the player characters are doing public service that's tied with magic, and magic is tied with, um, as I understand it, tied with belief. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm guessing that tie with belief is the reason why most people outside of that world wouldn't see the magical effects because they don't believe magic is real.
That's actually not a concept that is at least specifically in the book. Certainly, you could run it that way,
Mm-hmm.
but it's intended to be. Um, Most people don't know about this because monsters will kill them or transform them into monsters when they see something. So there just aren't that many people that survive to spread the word.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the fact that the monsters tend to be uh, corrupted versions of ordinary people. That's the term corrupted. That the big bads, the undoers, have corrupted people, and they like to corrupt people in positions of authority. So while not every person in a position of authority that you could tell about monsters is a monster themselves, uh, any of them could be.
Yeah.
And so that's the narrative conceit that's supposed to stop the players from going on the news.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you
Yeah,
know,
I was under the impression, because of that whole theme of belief, that it wouldn't be far removed from the way belief is literally food to gods in, say, the Discworld books. You know,
yeah, that is the idea of that belief creates magic is a part of it in that well all the magic in the setting comes from the national spirits, which
mm-hmm.
are sort of uh, the personifications of our national identities. So America has national spirits like Uncle Sam and Lady Liberty, and so the idea is that our belief in our nation and in the identities of our nation create those spirits, and then they're they can then empower people with small parts of their own power that is ultimately from because people believe that they should exist and uh, that this nation has that personality. There's also the titular Amerarcana are the magic items of the setting, and they are all objects that have magic imbued in them just based on people's belief in them. So, like uh, apple pie, there's magical apple pie that will allow you to go back home because there's nothing that says home like apple pie, and uh, there's you can find a magical Louisville Slugger, the baseball bat that is a magical weapon because that's again uh, there's nothing more American than baseball, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in a roundabout way, say, I could say that that's certainly analogous to to various local customs. I mean, every every state has some sort of bird, some sort of tree,
Hmm.
some sort of flag that is its particular identification. Um, I could I could probably be cute and say that the national spirit will look like, depending on where you are, looks like a turkey, because the turkey almost became the national bird. It lost by one vote to the bald eagle.
Yeah. Um, Baldy the Eagle is statted in the book.
Hmm.
Well, statted is a strong word. There's a description
Yeah,
of it. It doesn't actually have any game stats.
I don't think
But
giving it game stats would be a good idea.
no, no, I don't think so. But yeah, I'm familiar with the turkey story, but
Mhm.
I wasn't thinking about it when I wrote that section of the book.
Consider it a
Maybe I should.
happy
Yeah,
accident in that
yeah,
case.
yeah.
Uh, and I remember watching that animated Constantine movie that came out not I won't say not too long ago. It was quite a while ago, but in that one one of the supporting characters was heavily implied to be the spirit of Los Angeles,
Mm.
uh, who ends up taking different appearances, but it be of different people that you wouldn't notice otherwise.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, that's the one of the main quest giver
mhm,
of the setting is intended to be Lady Liberty.
mhm,
She's supposed to be the person who imbued the all the PCs with their power, and she's the one who knows what's going on. So, and she can, but it's not like they're talking to the Statue of Liberty all the time. She can personify, and it's stated that she, you know, can look like whatever she wants, but she's always going to be a woman in a green dress with wearing a small tiara.
uh, much you brought up the operator. The other thing that comes to mind with that is the woman in the red dress in the first Matrix,
Sure.
who you're not supposed to look at because that's a trap.
Yeah.
Unless you want to be shot at by an agent, which uh, but I can see where the direction is going. Uh,
Hmm.
so it I would say based on the way you've described things that it does have that same direction of that modern mythology that was all over the place in the 1990s in popular culture.
Yeah. That's the yeah the idea is definitely trying to take modern mythology and the folk tales and just kind of and folk beliefs uh, uh, in our cultural figures and you know make the make the metaphor into literal fact, um,
Mm-hmm.
and thus magic.
Oh yeah.
One of the most important characters in the playtest has ended up being Rosie the Riveter. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
from the World War II propaganda posters.
Mm-hmm. But with that in mind, what would you be shooting for as far as a page count of the full book?
It's supposed to be relatively short. My the current draft is a little over 100 pages, and I wouldn't intend to go too much further than that. So it's very lightweight compared to my other games, and that's what it's intended to be. It's supposed to be, as I said, trying to let the mechanics get out of your way, so there's not as much in terms of mechanics or even as much in terms of lore as some of the other stuff that I've done over the years.
Mm-hmm. I can get that. With that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come out the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens around here.
You are very welcome.
And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged. And
well,
of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
oh, I was just going to thank you for having me again.
Yep.
So continue with uh, your exit.
Yeah. A sincere thanks, as always, to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come along to the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.